The Weeping Woman. I heard this story from a cousin of mine who lives in a small village in the state of Rajasthan, in India. A story of an incident that happened many years ago when the country was still under British rule. In this village lived an old, frail woman named Leelawati. Well, not exactly. She wasn't allowed too often into the village at all. Neither were her companions, who lived in a separate area on the outskirts of the village. Leelawati was a professional mourner, along with her other female companions. In some parts of India, there is a strange custom where when someone belonging to an important family would die, they would not be allowed to mourn because of their social status. So they called in professional mourners, who take in all the information they could about the recently deceased and cry out loud enough for the whole village to listen. Tears would flow like rivers, and their wails would be louder than thunder as they beat their chest in sorrow while walking along the funeral procession. This custom is known as Rudali. They would always dress in black, and people would steer clear of them, thinking that they are inauspicious and would bring bad luck to the village. Leelawati was the oldest of them all. She had even forgotten her age. Her husband had died years ago, and she had no children. But her voice was the loudest when crying out during funerals. She was an expert at what she did. Every once in a while, a representative from the colonials would come on down to collect the tax. The village was within a few miles of a large house the British had made to house important officers and other personnel from time to time. This house was currently occupied by Captain Smith, who was practically worshipped by the local merchants of the village, for he could get them a license to trade opium. One day, Smith was passing through the dusty road, going past the village, riding on his prize horse. He had gotten the horse from the stables of a Maharaja. As he was riding past, he saw a small black figure lying on the road. It was Leelawati. She had gone to fetch water from the village well and had tripped and fell. She was bleeding from her forehead, and her broken earthen pot lay next to her, leaking water over the dusty road. She reached out and groaned for help, grabbing Smith's boot as he slowed down beside her. Despite not understanding what she was saying, Smith knew she needed help, but he was disgusted by this woman. An old, frail hag, lying on the road. How dare she even touch him? He kicked her off and rode on, going back home. Leelawati was found dead the next morning. She was cremated near the river, and the priest at the village temple presided over it to pray for her soul. However, her soul wasn't that prepared to move on. Later that night, as Smith lay in his bed, he heard someone wailing outside his house. The cry was so sorrowful, it pulled at his heart. He had never heard a sound so depressing before. But strangely, he was drawn towards it. He climbed out of his window and walked towards the road. The weeping grew louder with every step. As he reached the road, he fell to his knees and started bawling himself, his head held in his hands. Smith's dead body was found by the road by his maid the next morning. The villagers say that Leelawati still fulfills her duties to this day. Every time someone in the village dies, you can hear her crying and beating her chest that night, walking through the dirt roads of the village. They call her the Weeping Woman, and they leave a coin on the road outside their house when someone passes away, as a payment, for she has mourned their loss.